4, 3, 2, rewind.
Rise of the Fallen, MMO Quest, Pantheon. Once again, time to pledge. Very excited. We're here to talk. Let's get this party to
share your thoughts.
Co-host Therek.
Weekly Adventures, co-host Desiree. We're almost professional.
Full disclosure.
Dangerous combination. Creating content and optimizations. We've got a lore video coming. Cannot wait, which is all about drone fast and some sort of cake. Mail on a Sunday.
News and notes.
Schedule for this week.
Hot cocoa. All these people.
Supports the show. Adventuring party.
You ready? Let's go.
Let me take a deep breath. Hail, you fine listeners. These are the voyages of the podcast Rewind. All about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the in development MMORPG by Visionary Realms. Its continuing mission to keep you up to date with the latest development news, community views, and other pursuits. This week, on episode 148, we're scanning the last Parting the Veil episode, touching on the tank classes, analyzing the June producer's letter, and beaming up the community content that will keep us in stasis just a little longer. So, fire up those engines. It's time to engage with me, Therek, and my starry-eyed co-host, Desiree, for this episode of The Rewind. Well, Desiree, if you can't tell from the intro, I have sci-fi on the brain.
Oh.
Not exactly space-related, but Black Mirror Season 6 is out.
Oh,
Black Mirror is
that's
one of my...
on the list. Man.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. So my wife and I are sort of consuming it as a weekly show, even though it's all, you can watch all the episodes, you can binge them if you want. But we've watched the first 2 episodes and 100% lived up to expectations for me. Like I have high standards for my favorite shows, right? Like, you know, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, all these things. And I've just been on a roll lately with some of these shows. They have lived up to my high standards. So do you watch Black Mirror?
No, I haven't. It's on my list of highly recommended shows that I probably will like, but requires a certain mood that I'm not always
require
in, you know?
a certain mood. Yes, it's very much like for me, it's like a Sunday night, you know, end of the week, turn your brain off, you know, sort of let everything go in preparation for the next week and just sort of completely immerse yourself in it. And it's funny because the 2 episodes we've watched, my wife really likes British crime dramas and like crime mystery shows. She's very much into she's watched them all basically. And the second episode was right on point. It was perfectly for her. Whereas the first episode was more for me because it was more tech related and more sort of a little more sci-fi-ish. But yeah, it's so cool. And so it's got something for everyone, I think. That's why I like it.
That's cool. That's cool. Just yet another recommendation.
Another recommendation, exactly. What have you been up to this past couple of weeks?
Oh, you know, it's been quite a week. I'm still even more. I don't even want to say sick, but I've got my seasonal cough. That's just, it's infuriating, man. Like it actually like upsets me. Like when I'll have like a coughing fit and I'll be like, you know.
I get that. When I get sick, I feel like I have like sickness depression. You know, like I feel like I just get so bummed out when I get sick, and I you know, not to minimize depression, but like it's like just makes me feel physically and mentally crappy.
Yeah, know? And like luckily I have a mute button here, and we'll get through the rewind, and I just hope it goes away soon. I'm fully medicated at this point, so
fully medicated. Yeah. That's a good state to do a podcast in. Absolutely, that makes for interesting content.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, you know what else makes for interesting content?
Oh, I do.
Is our adventuring party. Yes. As always, they are here to support us. We have Deimos on the Dark Myr Bard, Breakout on the Archai Shaman, Grogu on the Human Warrior, Anton on the Dark Myr Shaman Glyph Keeper, Ziplocs on the Dark Myr Rogue, Sparoh on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Code on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scar Bard, WikiWoo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Horsosaurus on the Human Warrior, Fury Wrath on the Archai Summoner, Churro Dude on the Halfling Dire Lord, Galarain Moonsong on the Elf Ranger, Annoying Llama on the Human Monk, and Stands in the Fire on the Dark Myr cleric. So you can see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, we've got the graphic there. Thank you, Sparoh, as always, for making the graphic. We really appreciate that. Always does a great job. And if you want to join that illustrious list of folks on the graphic, or you just heard me read out, you can head over to our Patreon page. Check out the options that are available there to join the adventuring raiding party in some form. You can also do a super chat or a super thanks, and we'll add your name to the scrolling banner, which you're going to see in a few minutes when we start the main part of the show. But as always, no matter what you do to support the show, whether it's just being here to check us out and listen, or leave a comment on the video, whatever you do, we appreciate it so much. We do this show for fun. It is always about that, and your support means everything to us. So we have a lot to get to today. We're going to get rolling right away here, Des. So what do you say? Let's go.
Let's adventure on.
This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. All right, so let's start with Parting the Veil. That came out a couple weeks ago now, and we are going to recap that, spend a little bit of time, not too much. If you haven't seen it, it is available for on podcast download on Spotify through VR's Spotify channel. You can also watch Pantheon plus U2, which Desrin and who did you have on that again? Was that Mana Rohan and Asera?
Mana Rohan and Asera, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys talked it out and sort of went into the little nitty-gritty details. I had a couple notes here, but Des, I'm going to rely on you to sort of fill in a couple gaps. They, as you might expect, they covered the 3 tank classes planned for Pantheon. Yeah. That is the Dire Lord, the Warrior, and the Paladin. Gave a couple little notes on each. Definitely the most, I think, Des, was on the Paladin, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they really went into some detail on the Paladin.
Paladin or Warrior, which I don't know, makes sense because we've covered a lot of the Dire Lord, right? So I think they recognized that maybe we don't spend a ton of time on the Dire Lord, so appreciate that.
Probably a good choice. Yeah, probably a good choice. They noted for the Dire Lord just a couple notes I picked up on that were maybe reveals, but it has the highest HP pool of all the tanks.
Yeah, that was a big drop, I think.
Minus sort of mentioned that was something new. And also just recap that they are the magic user specialist tank who specializes in dealing with magic using enemies. With regard to the Warrior, they gave a little more detail about, saying it hasn't really changed that much since we last saw the Warrior, which was the co-stream ages ago now, a couple years ago.
Many years.
Yep. The use of banners is still a thing.
Thank goodness. I think that was, I know I was just a little nervous, you never know after this long. And so, yeah, here I was like, okay, banners, we're good. We're good.
Yeah. You can what's in, what's out, what's still the thing. They a couple details maybe we didn't know before, or maybe we didn't see them function this way before, was that they not only buff your party in some positive way, they also affect the enemy in some negative way. So it's I think Joppa talked about it being a sort of double effect.
Yeah.
Which was kind of neat.
Yeah, that was
cool. That is actually quite a boost for the Warrior in terms of how the banners work. And they said you can have up to 3 active, I think is the max level, and it sort of scales up with mastery, if I'm remembering that correctly, right, Doug?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So the other part they talked about in conjunction with the banners being sort of the other side of the coin is what they called formations. Now, I don't know if we know much about this. I don't know if we knew much about this previously. And obviously, I'm not a tank specialist. It's not my class of choice or my archetype. But they talked about formations. And, I followed it for a bit. But Des, can you fill in a little bit of the blanks here? What they said about formations here?
Well,
do you remember?
Before you put too much pressure on me, during the Parting the Veil, I was floundering going through technical issues, and so my notes were a little sketchy until about halfway through through the show. But I did get something on formations, and what this sounds like, the mechanic in itself isn't the interesting part, or I mean, it's interesting, but it's the implications, I think, that are meaningful. And a formation seems to be like a skill that you can use when there's, as they put it, 3 or more enemies in combat. And I think Joppa mentioned one that was like attack speed, damage bonus to the party, and the interesting thing about that is the whole 3 or more enemies, because if you guys have watched any, content from Pantheon lately, especially like pre-alpha, you'll know that ideally you're only, hitting one thing at a time, right?
Right.
And so the idea that the warrior's actually going to have this built-in functionality for multi-pools, I think is noteworthy.
Yeah, really. And it feeds into the need for crowd control, right? So if you get a benefit from having multi enemies, you're going to have a greater need for crowd control.
Yeah.
So you can kind of synchronize between two different classes there, two very different classes, right? A support class and a tank class. And they actually touched on that a little bit, because talking about what the flex role for the warriors. We've seen the flex role for the rogue. We've seen the flex role for like what was some of the other flex roles we've seen, like the trying to think about it. I think the Enchanter, talking about debuffing, and the Shaman, as opposed to healing,
dots and debuffing and
right.
Yeah.
So they defined the warrior's flex role being in the realm of support, which is interesting because that feeds into that. Having a multi-pull and then sort of being able to deal with it would be something that they'd be interested in doing. So I like that.
I think this is actually so exciting for me, because the first thing that pops into my head is a warrior support build. Build is probably going to throw a bunch of people, but a warrior that actually leans into that kind of a thing, and it almost plays out like a bard in my head, if you think about it, right? With the banners and formations and everything. And I could totally see that happening, to be a supportive warrior, especially, hopefully we see some more reveals about like the rest of their kit, or like techniques, abilities and stuff. Cause I know I've mentioned like intercepts a lot. And it is still something that I really hoped that they add in, because that functionality of, maybe taking a hit every once in a while for the main tank, doing all these buffs or banners that, as long as the party and the enemies are in the radius, are buffing and debuffing or buffing and, who knows what else. And that is such a unique play style.
It is. It actually makes me want to play a warrior more than I ever have in the past. I've never really been into the turtle approach to game, to my role in a group. It doesn't appeal to me. It's not active enough. This sounds way more interesting to me. And when you think about what they also said about, one of the questions was asked was like, is that shield link skill still in, where I can't remember what the name of it
Wall
was,
of Shields,
but Wall of Shields, thank you, where you link with another warrior and you sort of become this, impenetrable wall of defense. So now you're dealing with that with another. You can pair a support-oriented tank with a more, sort of burly type of tank, resilient type of tank that can take a little bit more of a beating, and you get this really interesting group potential, right?
And that also is another detail from this PTV that probably has stronger implications, because if you think about like, why would you, and they kind of touched on this, was like, why would you need something like that? Like, why would you need this Wall of Shields ability? And it sounds like they're going to try to lean into situations that actually have that kind of damage, where you're going to need this kind of defense to handle it. And that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, and that's the other side of this coin for me always. When I hear about these interesting classes, I'm like, that sounds awesome. Is there going to be content that's going to put that to the test? Is there going to be
that's
content
always the
that
question,
really, right? Like, because you have to, if you're going to design these really cool classes, you got to design content that takes advantage or creates the need for them to use these abilities. One of the things about Tears of the Kingdom that I was saying to somebody else the other day was like, it's a great game, but I feel it's a game with too many answers and not enough questions. I have all these options about building things and all these ways of solving problems, and honestly, there aren't that many problems to solve. There aren't enough riddles posed to me that I need to be creative. There's always one that sort of works for everything, or one
the
or
really
two that
long
work for
bridge.
everything.
I've seen like the memes,
Right.
just everything. You just
Yeah.
build this long bridge, and there you go.
I haven't seen those, but without even seeing those, I know exactly why that makes sense, because that's exactly what it is. So these are cool, and I want to see these classes get these kind of detail, and I like parting the veil for going into this kind of detail. Now let's see the content that presents that challenge to you to make use of those skills.
Yeah, especially one other little mechanic that I'll mention, because it kind of came along with the warriors, was we're starting to talk about shields more. You might have noticed we got some shields update, and I want to say the last episode we talked about shields a little bit.
Yeah.
But the interesting quote here I have from Joppa is control over what damage you take and when. So
yes,
I don't want to, completely theorize or anything, but with Wall of Shields, as well as, kind of how they're talking about shields mechanics in general, I'm wondering, like, are they going for some kind of active blocking? Right. Maybe not like ESO, right click and you hold up your shield. I don't think they'll go for something like that, but maybe some of the fights are going to develop to be more timing based, I guess. Like, here comes the big attack, and, like, brace for it, I don't know.
Yeah, he used the term, like the phrase, setting up a lot of things, right? I like that. Yeah. And I think that's what you're kind of getting at, is you want to set up situations where you're going to use a skill, something is going to happen, so you're going to set something up. Shields is an example. You set up this big attack, and then you can use that shield skill at the right moment. Something like that. But
because that creates some really good moments. Use. Like I really hope they lean into that. It sounds like they're wanting to. So really, really want to see how that plays out. Really exciting stuff. In theory here. So like I mean, this is kind of a going thing. It's like, I'm more excited about the tank PTV than I was the healer one, because like there's some stuff in here that I feel like either it's somewhat tangible in its like mechanics and meaning, but some things have like bigger implications and with direction that I'm like, man, please, like, Well,
I think that maybe what you're enjoying about this one more than the other one was that there was actually some very specific, like, information about the classes dropped. The Paladin in particular got a lot of like, okay, so they have the most powerful attack or something versus undead, right? The AE threat generation, I think is
AE
threat
what they were generation was like, that's the Paladin is the AE guy. Huh.
Yeah. Even more than clerics, right? So, and that's saying something. They also said that they have the Paladins have the longest duration stun of any of the tank classes.
Yep.
Which is interesting. So we got really concrete stuff for a class that we've never seen in game, not even code. No matter how many years you go back, you're never going to see a Paladin. It's never been in. So really, really interesting to have that kind of concrete information. Maybe it hints at where the class is in terms of development, and I don't want to speculate too much and get into trouble with that, but they did say some very specific things. Some other things they said about the Paladins, that they share spells and protective buffs with clerics. And that was a good question, I thought, from the community, whoever asked that, because that's something that comes up a lot in the Ranger Druid talk. That has always been a thing. Like, our Rangers just get crappier versions of Druid spells. Well, they said that the Paladin and the Cleric are sharing some buffs and spells, which I thought was interesting. So we'll have to take a look at, and I think they named a couple of them too. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, the one I had, Arcing Light, is something that clerics also have. I didn't get any others, but really, really. Edict of Authority. Oh no, that's the stun. The longest duration stun is Edict of Authority, which costs Wrath and a Reckoning point. So it's like a really big, and it's even longer for undead. Yeah,
I like that you brought up the Reckoning points. I thought that was really interesting too, because the way that they spoke about it and they framed it was, there's no active way So Reckoning is the resource that the Paladin uses, and there's no active way to regen Reckoning. It only does it passively, and it's very, very slow. But what that allows them to do is make those abilities that use it very, very potent, right?
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of Phenomena
trade-off.
points for the Druid in Vanguard, because it was a similar concept of like you have these really impactful things. Well, I mean that's kind of how it was supposed to be, but whether it played out that way or not, but it's a somewhat fixed rate of gain on those, but they could do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, cool, man. That's a good comparison. I had no idea that was even, I didn't even know about that. So interesting that it's been, a lot of Vanguard, the spirit of Vanguard lives on, I think, in a lot of things Joppa talks about.
If something is done well, like no reason not to.
Why not?
Yeah. I did want to mention on the note of the class resource, though, that I think we missed on the warrior side was they did consolidate the warrior resource a little bit to make it like less micromanagey, I guess was and so that was kind of another bonus, was like they're just like, there's just too much like silly like juggling. So
it went from resilience to battle
just
points,
battle points,
if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so there's just battle points now. So it reminded me of the rogue a little bit with the opportunity points, or the opportunity that you sort of accumulate through being in stealth to use your abilities. Similar concept there. So it was a good parting the veil. I enjoyed it. I thought the questions were good. I like that. Again, we're hearing about some cool ideas. Now we just got to find out when we get to actually play with those ideas, and when we get to see them demonstrated. Not even play with them, just see them demonstrated would be great. So go check that out if you're a potential tank class player, or even if you're not, you probably enjoy it. So that was parting the veil. Now let's move on to the June producers letter, which came out came out Thursday, June 29th. Came out in June, that would make sense. I think you can kind of divide it into two parts. There was two main topics they focused on. The first one was about changes in how VR is going to be delivering development information going forward. So that was how they sort of led off with, and I'll read the quote because it's important that we understand what they're saying here. It said, as we head into the last half of 2023, we've decided to take some time to refine how we show Pantheon's progress. For the months of July and August, we'll be pulling back from some of our content features to redefine their goals and create new assets. So, end quote. So that basically means we're going to get minimal development updates outside of the producer's letter at the end of the month from VR in the next 2 months, in July and August. So that's, it's a little bit hard to take, or not hard to hear, right? I think you would agree with me.
I mean,
and I think,
sorry, I just, there's an extra part of this that I have to toss in here because it kind of adds to the gut punch a little bit, because, coupled with this was the calendar, right?
Yeah.
And, spoiler alert, the phrasing here, pulling back from, they said some of our content features for July and August, and we looked at the July calendar, which, we'll talk about, but it's like, but then there's no streams on the July calendar. Right. So it's like not even some of the video content. It's like all of it for July. So so it's the development stuff that's getting pulled back, right? Like the video development pieces that we've kind of gotten really used to. They've been on this 2 stream a month process or program for a while now.
A couple of years now. Like I remember when it changed, and I remember I've been around long enough, and you as well, to remember the days when it was much different. There was a much sparser landscape of information.
Oh yeah, when we just wouldn't get one in a month or several months or. Yeah. So
this isn't new ground, but it's hard to go from, a lot to much less, at least for the next couple months. So we'll get to the calendar and we'll tell you what is on the calendar for the month. But before we get to that, I also want to focus on one little phrase here. They noted, they're doing this to redefine their goals and create new assets. And I think that can be confusing. I'm assuming they're referring to media assets here.
Yeah, again, this is going to be the start of I think a theme with this producer's letter is using unnecessary words that are confusing. And this is the beginning. It totally, it sounds like, their content creation assets. I mean, it would be really cool if they had like a maybe if they were working on a like a press kit,
yeah,
but
that would be pretty sweet.
It would be a stretch, I think, to kind of correlate that, but that's really the only way I can think of like assets, which is just like promotion material. But it sounds like they're just talking about like internal stuff.
Yeah, when I first read it, I thought game assets, and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, they're talking about new media assets, like new media pieces that they're developing. So that because it kind of fits with what the context of it is. So so basically that's what they're working on over the course of the next 2 months, I guess. We're basically facing a pretty a drought here for the summer. It does.
Summer drought. It's actually appropriate.
It is, and it's again, it's understandable because people take time off in the summer, and we don't. Everybody's entitled to have their time off, and it's going to be a little tough. And I think we're all just going to have to weather the storm a little bit. But it also means like, we're not going to have much to talk about for the next 2 months, you and I doing this. And that's, of course, that's, not their concern. That is not something they should be taking into consideration. However, I do think that, there might be a little bit of a, not backlash, but a little bit of consternation amongst the community about having to
already seeing that, a lot of folks are kind of like apprehensive, to say the best, right? Just be like, whoa, we're pulling back. And even if it's with the promise of, as they said, like, I don't even need to quote it. It's just basically better content, right? Overall is the goal. Yeah.
I wish they had specified more that they were doing this to work on game development stuff. Like if they had just been a little bit more clear that we are pushing a big content forward from the game on the game development side of things, I think it would have made this a little bit smoother, a little bit easier to comprehend.
Yeah, I don't want to skip ahead too much, but like one thing, like the only thing I can recall that they did note on that front is that the new format, because basically we're not going to have these like live streams, except for specific things which we don't really know other than gameplay related or like events. We don't. But as far as like the regular content that's going to change from a live stream, the idea is that besides being better produced, it would be more convenient for developers, right? Because they don't have to be there at 6:00 Pacific to do a live interview. So, I mean, that's kind of development related, makes them a little more efficient with their time.
Yeah. And I've asked that question before. I've mentioned before, I should never take away from developer, time and effort and working time. But so, and we've always been told that that's not the case. Never is it interrupting any kind of game development. But maybe, maybe it was. Maybe there's the reason to do this on that front. So, there's another big part of what they talked about here was they want to diversify their platform when they do return in the fall. So moving forward, they said moving forward, live streaming on Twitch will be prioritized for gameplay events and larger events that tailor directly to being live with the community. So that's what you mentioned there, saying really the only live streams.
Yeah.
Right. Might be a gameplay demo, maybe a co-stream, something like that will be on Twitch. But everything else, it sounds like, is going over to YouTube. They want to really get into the premieres, which we know well about.
We know all about that. Great system.
I like the premieres. So I kind of am hopeful for that. I think that's probably a pretty good idea. In terms of the cadence of all this. So like, what's it going to look like? They said you can expect our monthly updates to go live at the same time that they currently do on Twitch, which is outlined on the calendar. So we're on that same cadence of like the second week of the month, and then but the parting the veil again is going to get a little different, which we're going to talk about in a second here. But it sounds like the big developer live stream when they come back in September that everybody sort of pays attention to is still going to be on the second week of the month. They went on to say these features will be more refined, more produced, and more cohesive to ensure we are focused on the meat and potatoes of our updates. So I like that, and that's been a critique we've had, you and I, stop with the fluff, just give us the goods, like give us the real meat and potatoes of what's going on.
Yeah.
Tell us about the game development. And it's kind of ironic because, this producer's letter, half of it was about content, right? And not about the actual game development. So
yeah.
I mean, sort of ironic there, but at least they're seeing, where they want to go. And I think that's in line with what people want. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah. Different people have different opinions on this. Some people prefer long form content. Some people prefer more casual conversations. Some people prefer the more, produced kind of stuff. I think there's always going to be a spread when it comes to how people like to enjoy content. Some people prefer live stream over like YouTube, and I typically I'm all about the information, whether it takes an hour or not. Because one thing that came up a lot in the producer's letter was they don't seem to like how long their stuff is. And while I feel like, we can kind of take a little bit of the burden to condense things down for people as like content creators, I mean, I'm sure, especially on the YouTube side, people will probably appreciate something that's just like straight and to the point, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm one of those. I think I'm on the other side of the fence from that. While I enjoy the long form conversations, I'm at the point of following this game where I just want like shoot directly into my veins. Just
the info, direct info. Like I'm actually on that side too at this point. I want to see it like play out that way. Because if it's shorter, I don't want that to be for lack of information. Like if it's shorter, it needs to have at least the same amount of information, but just more concise. Right. And I'll admit I'm a little bit like apprehensive on that, but
that will be the test. You're right. No, you're 100% right. I mean, if it's short and with no information attached to it, if it's just short fluff, nobody wants that. Like I guess that's better than long fluff, but like an hour-long conversation where they don't talk about anything of meaning is worse than 5 minutes. But it's still, they got to hit that target of make it short but very informative. And that's sort of what they said about Parting the Veil that I mentioned a second ago. I'll just read the quote about Parting the Veil because it sounds like this is the piece that's exemplifying what we're talking about. I said, quote, "We are reformatting how Parting the Veil works by condensing it down into several short videos on a single topic over the course of a month. This will be pre-produced content while still tapping into the community for questions that they want answers to." End quote. So they tried this before a little bit. They did the Fragments of Terminus series. You remember there was like these, little bit
kind of short-lived, but
Yeah, it was short-lived. I liked it though. I didn't mind it. But the problem with that was that it was just it was information that had already been put out in another form. So I didn't really I'd already seen it, so I didn't really watch it again. So I like that I think these little bits can work well. And I honestly, as you know well, and everybody else knows, the YouTube and like the social media algorithms are all pushing short form content these days. Everything is getting targeted towards short form content, right? And you can't blame, I mean, I don't know if this is, where this is sort of being coming from in terms of the ideas, but you can't blame VR for wanting to maximize their social media reach.
It's worth noting that this format, that at least what it sounds like they're aiming for here, is much more like what everyone else does. Right. This kind of short, bite-sized, like here's your information in a produced and kind of, I don't know, more hype-inducing way, usually. Yeah. And it's just a lot more easy to reference as well, is a secondary benefit. And so I like where this is going personally. I think it supports what Parting the Veil probably should be. And it also probably allows them to, maybe think about how they say things, a little bit more, right? Yeah. Which I think is going to just be a net positive.
That's well said. And I 100% agree with you. I think it gives them a chance to curate it a little more. And I think that's a good thing. It's funny because these long form pieces are so they just fit with VR because VR is kind of a throwback company to begin with, right? They do things a little bit of an old school way. Now they're kind of like maybe moving into a bit of a newer, more modern way of delivering their information. And you're right, some people are going to not like it, and some people are going to be okay with it. So it depends on how it's done and what they actually, if they actually give us good information. So we'll wait and see how it plays out. It's also interesting to see how they're going to incorporate the community questions, because they did say that's still going to be a part of this, right? So I would assume they're just going to continue to gather them from their social media platforms, from Discord and that kind of thing. So I like that they did that, as we saw with this Parting the Veil recently, and I mentioned a second ago. Good questions from the community, really good ones, to get them to put them on the spot a little bit. So we'll see. Yeah,
we will see. So, the end tagline there. That I'm just going to throw this out there as kind of a. This is where our expectations have been set. Okay, our expectations have been set with this line, and that is that they will, quote unquote, come out roaring in September. Good call. Absolutely, they're setting a high bar for themselves. I think there's you add in a lull in development information, and with a new sort of media. Yeah, hopefully it like compounds strategy up, right? Yeah, so we get this really nice September. What was the horizon? Anyway, there was a while ago when they sort of had a new dawning in their own sort of development scheme that Joppa referenced. That maybe this is what we're doing again. So it'll be nice to see in September what that looks like. So, stay with us, stay with the game, following the game for a couple months. It's going to be quiet. We'll try to keep you entertained as much as we can. We'll see what we can do about that. But anyway, let's look at the calendar for what July actually does hold. So you can see on July 11th, they are doing their community spotlight. This is on Jiraki, who I don't know at all. I'm not actually familiar with Jiraki. Probably the first new name that I can recall in any of these. So looking forward to this one. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, here's so July 20th, they have on the calendar a tester-exclusive Discord Q&A. It says pre-alpha testers get some insider updates from Chris Perkins. Now, this one's kind of, we can't really talk about this. Yeah. I'd love to. I know Des, we would both be eager to discuss this, but it's an awkward situation. We do have to respect NDA here, so we can't really discuss this right now. We'll see for what the future holds with regard to future ability to talk about this, but right now we just kind of got to let that be. It's there on the calendar. Yeah, it is there on the calendar. Sort of put it out there. Now, maybe some not so great news to some really cool news. Listen to this. So this is sort of an announcement for us. So on July 15th and 16th is the next pre-alpha test session. And we can talk about this because this involves us, and it also involves you, our awesome Rewind listeners, who get this exclusive news first, and it's going to involve you as well. So to celebrate the 150th episode of the Rewind, we got special permission from VR to do that episode live from Terminus. Yeah, so from in-game. Yeah. We're in game. We're going to be doing the Rewind live. This is going to happen on Saturday, July 15th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. We got a 3-hour window, and this is going to be streaming from within the pre-alpha test. That's going to be me and Des coming at you with. Now, do we know exactly what we're doing yet? No, but it's going to be a Rewind episode. So we're going to try and follow the format a little bit. Now, of course, there's going to be no development news coming in the next couple of weeks. So we have to factor that into the equation here. So we got to talk about something. But if you think about other podcasts, when they do live episodes from like a pub or another venue, think about, it's going to be like that. We're going to focus in, I think, on celebrating the community, and we're going to try and do some shout outs. We're going to do some drive-by interviews. We're going to just have some fun. This is going to be like a summer celebration for us because it's episode 150. We've been doing this for 3 years almost. It's crazy. It's nuts. We're going to do pledge giveaways. So if you're interested in getting a free pledge out of the deal, you definitely want to be there for that. But, Des, you and I, we're going to work out some details. We're going to get our plans firmed up here. But what do you think? This is going to be fun, right? I mean, 3 hours, man. It's going to be the longest Rewind ever. But it will be. It will probably also be the most chaotic. So take that out. Absolutely.
That's been like the trend of our show here is we've gone from like highly scripted. We just keep getting looser and looser as time goes on. We're like,
yep.
What are we doing this week? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I don't know. So,
but hey,
anyway,
at least it will be pre-alpha like footage, right? So
yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people want to hang out for that one way or another, and especially because we know a lot of people in pre-alpha. You'll see a lot of familiar faces, I'm sure. We'll see how trolled we get, how like that's really what's gonna make the little cherry on top is.
I've already been told by Drac that he plans to run around behind us the whole time and wave and do, emotes and all that kind of stuff.
However you want to spend your PA time, man.
That's exactly right. You're limited 24 hours. If you want to spend it trolling us, you are free to do what you like. But leave a comment, on the video here if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know if you have, if there's an idea, if you have something you'd like to see us do during this 3-hour window, we can do, And we're not focused on gameplay here. We are going to be just trying to have some fun with the community, doing a little bit of a talk show style thing, but we are definitely open to ideas, and we just want to have some fun. So hopefully you can join us for that. Again, it's not on the usual Rewind Sunday too. Keep that in mind. It's Saturday, July 15th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, and it'll be streamed live here on our YouTube channel. So can't wait for that. I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah.
Let's move on, to talk about the second half of the producer's letter. And we actually got some game development news here, but not in the way we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
They did talk about reworking the roadmap to alpha. And so that's still in the works. It's still being reworked.
I definitely wasn't expecting the stripping down of the roadmap as current, for sure. That was all of it. Right off the bat, I was like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah, no roadmap. No road. They've decided to take the roadmap out while it's being worked on and just replace it with some bullet point notes here. And it is what it is. It's fine. At least we got something.
Yeah, there's some things in here worth taking away from it.
There is. So just a quote that we got from that, they said, "We are reformatting this section of the monthly producer's letter as well. Expect to see a new roadmap design in September that will not only be easier to read, but include more information." And I don't know if Desert, if you saw the video that I made about War of Ragnaroks and their June developer update.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned it on the last episode, I was like, yeah, definitely I got to highlight that developer tracker tool. And if you haven't watched it, it's on the channel here. You can go check it out. If you're not interested in the game, that's fine. Just look at the developer development tracker that they use. They call it the game progress tracker. It is great. And it's so information packed that, again, something maybe they want to take a look at. But
and I'm going to highlight again. They said more information.
Mm-hmm.
This is my just timestamp this. I'm going to reference reference this line.
Coming out roaring and easier to read and include more information.
There you go.
That's the standard that's been set. So let's go to some of the bullet points that they gave us here. The first one is we are nearing the completion of a meta design map tool that supports a deeper level of pre-production and zone design. They say the tool is going to be very useful as they expand their work into new zones. Can't really talk about it because I think they needed to define what this is.
Dude,
a design map tool.
So here's my theory.
Yeah.
They're setting up the new roadmap, right? They're like, okay, we promise guys, it's going to be easier to understand. And so they come out swinging with this bullet point to be impossible to understand.
Yeah. It just,
nothing emphasizes the need for better understanding than some of these bullet points. A meta design, I'm sorry.
Nobody knows what that means unless you are working with the tool or in game development. Nobody knows what that means. So I guess it's just about building zones. I guess maybe not.
Yep.
I don't know.
I mean, that's my takeaway is something they need for zone building. I'm sure a lot of people, they're in their heads, they're like, oh God, another tool. But I don't know. Maybe it's not a huge thing. But we don't know.
No, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe they'll do a stream about it or something. The next one was we are making some IT infrastructure changes that moves us away from our existing backend to one in support of more robust servers, forums, security, and reliability. This has been done before. This was on the talking points, I don't know, a little while ago when they were redoing their website and they really needed to redo some of their IT infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's also vague, and it's, I don't want to say concerning, but it is notable that they've done this before in terms of something that they've highlighted.
Well, this is probably the bullet point for me that I'm like, okay, like I really hope that this is something that comes to fruition really soon, because especially the PA testers will know the accounts kind of ecosystem. There's a lot of stuff that really could use some streamlining, and so I really hope that's what this is. It sounds like it. So hopefully this ends up having those ducks a little bit more in a row.
Yeah. Again, both if you're reading this and it says more robust servers, you could think that they're talking about the game servers, and
nope.
I'm assuming they're not.
No.
Yeah, that's not what they're talking about here. They're talking about like forums and website and the stuff they use for their internal forums and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. The next bullet point is one that I'm more interested in. This is where they said they are systematically removing store-bought NPCs and replacing them with in-house models. The common wolf has been concepted, model complete, and animated with 3 variations, as well as the Pantheon common rat, bat, and spider are in various stages of the process. This is great. They need to put pictures in the newsletter for this to have any impact. It'll be nice to see something in-house that they've done, because they always talk about, the assets they've bought are just temporary.
Right.
We're going to do our own thing. Give us an idea. Show us the aesthetic that you're going for here. Put some media in there to show this.
It's so funny because this is one of those things that like I want to be excited about, because we get like assets like VR made assets, but then it's like but it's like the most generic creatures. And I'm like, of anything that I would have been like, it's okay to use store assets for this, it would probably be like basic wildlife.
Sure. So
on one hand, it's cool. Again, it would have been cooler to like see, right? Because they did say the wolves sound pretty much ready to show. But then the other side's like, man, but like, can't we see an Ogrim or like...
Yeah, right.
Something very Pantheon, something specifically Terminician?
Terminician? Something like that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that you would have gotten a lot more traction by showing something, and if it had been something bespoke to the Pantheon universe, right? To their landscape.
Yeah. Maybe these wolves are very specifically Pantheon.
Yeah. This is good stuff. I don't want to seem like I'm being negative about this. This is what we need to see, but we need to see it. So
well said.
Speaking of needing to see things, they said they are undergoing major work on lighting and atmospherics, including work towards the return of their in-house day-night system. I didn't know how much I liked this until it wasn't there anymore.
Right? Yeah. It's funny because I feel like it took a few sessions for people to like notice. Be like, wait, it's not getting dark anymore. As you guys have seen in the streams, it's been a while since we've seen a nighttime, right?
Yeah.
But that's a big one. They didn't say it in here, but man, it's been a bit since we've heard about weather. I want to hear about weather. Well, I shouldn't say I want to hear about it.
I want to see the
weather in the game. But
I want to see it in game. It just adds so much to the experience, and they want to make an immersive experience. This is a good way to do it. And when they showed those off for the first time, the day-night cycle, it got a lot of positive feedback.
I mean, I love it. Like this actually, I don't know, this might be my favorite note just because I loved the night so much. I want to see it return.
Desrin loves the night. He is a creature of the night.
Lately, yeah.
You're like Woosis, the night owl.
Ooh, wow! You just kind of popped that one right out. That was pretty good.
I got those lore names at the tip of my tongue all the time. So, The next two, I don't really have much to say about. I don't know if you do. I'll read them both, but they're just kind of generic if you ask me. But they said they're implementing fixes and improvements to grass and trees, both in performance and aesthetics. And they've also made some updates to the lootable container code and how loot sets for those containers are generated. I don't know. I don't have anything to say about that.
It's just stuff like how loot works, you know? I mean, I would just condense this to say, like, they're working on how loot is generated. And then, like, you know, it's interesting they say both performance and aesthetics, I guess, for grass and trees, because when you say aesthetics, it's like, you know, are they talking about like shaders? Because if they were talking about like new models and stuff, I'm sure they would say that. But again, like, a lot of this is like, they're obviously working on like visuals, interestingly enough. And so, yeah, this goes along with that. And, you know, Kyle's done a lot of optimization stuff already. That's been very fruitful. So, you know, more graphic stuff.
Yep, and getting those frame rates higher and higher and smoother. Now the next one's a bit of a tough
brace
one
yourselves,
for me.
guys.
Brace yourselves. So they said PvP has been enabled for internal testing. Now,
and that's
PvP's
it. That's the whole note. That's the whole note.
Yeah, I'm not paraphrasing. That's just what it says. And a couple things here. PvP's never been on the roadmap to alpha. It's been something they have acknowledged they want. And it's always been an offhand remark here and there. Never been a focus, never been anything they've really delved into too much. But now, at this stage of development, they're doing some internal testing on PvP. And whether you're a fan of PvP or not, I'm not a fan of PvP, but that's not relevant to this discussion. It just doesn't make sense from an outsider perspective as to why this fits into this phase of development. Maybe they need to explain it. You know, one line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words here isn't going to do it. It need to explain why this is something that they're developing right now. So it did, you know, it threw me off when I saw this. I'll say.
Yeah, it's like you're going through the notes and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? You know, okay, so to be comedic, because that's how I deal with trauma. You know the meme from oh my gosh, Mad Max, where it's like, that's bait. Have you seen that meme? Okay,
no.
And it's usually like in like Twitter posts and stuff where someone's referring to another post to be like, don't fall for it. That's how this feels. Like, it feels like VR is just like, you know what is going to absolutely just get people super worked up? Let's say that we turn PvP on and just leave it there. Just leave it there. No context. Just, hey guys, we turned PvP on, and just watch them squirm. I mean, that obviously that's not like, you know, that's almost certainly not what they're doing. It's just, that's what it feels like, because this is so out of the blue.
It's completely out of the blue. And you know, I understand why you might, that's a funny theory. I don't think that's true either, but you know, getting people talking is yeah, I know. And it's good humor, because it's just so strange that they would put this in there. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're a fan of PvP or not. It's a matter of
why
development.
Why now?
in insight that seems out of nowhere. You know, like, we've been focused on crafting for the last little while. Crafting has been the thing. Crafting. If this note said we're turning our minds towards the PvP aspect of Pantheon, PvP, and like give us a description of what sort of the mindset is here, that would make more sense. Again, I guess we'll wait and see. But you know, maybe this plays into something else. I don't know. But
I will specifically point out, though, they do say internal testing, as in not PA. So, which again is makes you question even more why it would be here in these notes. But I do want to point that out, just in case that is significant.
You know, to use some humor to deal with trauma, is that this means that you and I cannot duel on Rewind 150 when we're doing our podcast live. We will not be able to fight each other for the spectator sport of our viewers.
That would be quite the silver lining to all of this, I think, right?
If it kind of would.
If that's what it ended up being, we'll make the most of it.
we could have like a little gladiator tournament pit going on, and we could round up some volunteers and see who wanted to have the
hey,
PvP.
Hey, you are not going to win against the shaman. Just saying.
If my class was in, I'd win, but not in the current state now.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next bullet point. They talked about running some initial tests on player customization of varying head styles, hair, and facial hair for human male and female. So this is interesting because it has to be with the new models, right? It has to be. Oh
God! I mean, if it's with the old models, like that's a real.
I mean, it would make sense.
But yeah, it's got to be with the new models.
Right. Okay. So if that is the case, then you can assume we're getting much closer, a little closer to the new models.
Isn't that so funny? It's like
online.
we're going to put a random note about like character customization. Again, they're just saying we're initial tests, so that this is probably not in the near future at all. But it's like we're going to talk about that, but we're not going to tell you guys what the state of the character models is right now.
Yeah, like you could have used this to lead into the state of the where the new models that they were hyping.
It's
6
funny
months ago
you say that, because when I was reading through it the first time, that's what I was like. My brain naturally went there. I was like, "Oh man, are we going to get some?" Oh,
womp womp womp. Nope. So, but I guess again, read into it maybe and hope for the best. But no. So another piece that they noted would be nice to have seen. They said there are 4 existing armor set conversions that are now complete with new textures and modeling. So that sounds awesome. I'd love to see that.
Everybody loves new model or new armor, right? Like
new models, new armor. I'll take anything. Just show me some pretty pictures of what the game's looking like, and what the things that are in the game are going to look like.
It is weird that conversions, like, does that strike you as an odd word to use there?
I don't know how to take it. I mean, in what context are you seeing that being used? Like, what are you taking that to mean?
That's like the quote is 4 existing armor set conversions are now complete with the new textures and modeling. So
perhaps that means that they are converted to different sizes of different races. So like a halfling versus
maybe
what it looks like. Halfling looks like in the same leather as opposed to an ogre in the same leather armor. I really don't know.
Yeah. I just that was just like a word. I was like, what does that mean? I actually don't know what they're intending that to mean.
Yeah. Use your imagination there. The last note in the producer's letter with regard to game development was that they've performed an update to awareness and concealment stats. They said awareness determines how effective a player's stealth detection is, and concealment determines how effective a player's stealth is. So this is actually pretty interesting, because when you're talking about awareness and concealment and stealth, you're usually talking about the rogue, right? I mean, unless I'm forgetting something, other classes don't have stealth available to them, right?
I'm also thinking about enemies, right?
Okay.
But
so you've got stealth enemies.
Yeah. This sounds like very much like again, like Vanguard, but probably tons of others, where it's kind of like a skill check between the two numbers, more or less, right? So it's like if your awareness is high enough, you can see the mob. If it's not, you don't. But perhaps that applies to players as well.
Yeah. So interesting, because they've really leaned into the whole detection. Remember they were talking about scent and hearing.
Yeah. We've even seen that.
We have seen that.
Like actual gameplay.
And I like that a lot.
Oh, me too.
I think that's
me too.
Fantastic thing, because it makes it so much more strategic and sort of more, tension building when you're playing the game. So it's cool. I like that they're working on the awareness and concealment, push and pull a little bit to try and make it as engaging as possible. So that's pretty neat. So that's the end of the producer's letter. Des, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that before we move on?
I mean, there's the last little thing that's not like producer's letter. But
okay.
yeah,
So-
that's pretty much it for the producer's letter. Yeah,
Right.
I don't really know what else to say.
No, we've kind of covered it. We kind of said how we feel about it overall. So, we'll move on from that. But one thing that this just came out today. So Friday, June 30th, when we're recording, the official forums are now open to everyone, which before they were just for people who had pledged. And I think you could
view
$5.
You could view
them,
but
you just couldn't post them, right?
Exactly. So that's actually this was such a nice just random surprise. Because this has been a rather contentious thing. I'm not recently because, I mean, it's been like this forever, right? So, but no paywall for official discussions, right? And this goes along with opening up the Discord as well.
Yeah.
So this is really cool, and I gotta give credit where credit's due. That this made me really happy.
Yeah, it made me happy too because I was a big user of the forums back when I first started following the game. I haven't checked the forums in forever, so I don't know what's going on over there anymore. But it's good for people who are
it's more the gesture of it, right?
Yeah, it's a gesture, and getting it in line with the Discord to sort of be synchronized with the Discord is important. And I really like the screenshot that they posted for the announcement with Fuzz Ruckus waiting in line, as well as the Spirit from looks like Spirit Manor, waiting in line at the gates to get in. I like that joke.
That is pretty good.
Yeah. And then last but not least, we do have a quick update on the VR's staffing situation. We always like to point these out. So longtime staff member Ben Walters, aka Kilson, who is their former security and conduct and security manager. He was the community manager before Savanya stepped in. Looks like he's no longer with the company. So you'll remember that they just announced recently that Savanya took over the community manager role. They haven't said anything about whether they're hiring a new conduct security manager position, whether it's being advertised, but we'll keep an eye on the job postings over on their corporate site. That's the best place to go to see, what they're hiring and what they're looking for. So if anything pops up, we'll definitely bring it up here. But that is it for this week's news. Let's talk about the notes for the coming up next weekend, July 3rd.
The Pantheon Plus notes.
Yeah, what are we up to over here at Pantheon Plus for July 3rd through the 9th? We are still trucking away on midnights for the After Dark crew on our Twitch channel, playing Embers Adrift. They're having a ton of fun. Drac posts lots of shorts from their adventures and little conversations. The ones, I don't know if you saw the ones, Des, where they were talking about the classes in EverQuest, like what it's like to play X class. Those have done really well. People like those a lot, which is pretty interesting that they do that while they're playing Embers. Yeah. So definitely midnight Eastern on Twitch. You want to check that out. Hang out with those guys playing Embers Adrift. It's a good time. Next Tuesday is the 4th of July. So we're not going to have the MMO 101 show on Tuesday night, but we are doing the MMO 201 show on Thursday night, Desmond.
Heck yeah,
and did we not have a ton of fun? Did we not have a ton of fun?
Unrest was great.
It was amazing. I kind of want to do it actually inspired me to do a little bit of a solo run through a dungeon, make some content, showing the lore of the dungeon, because you don't need a group to do any of this stuff on that server. Right, it's completely, everything's soloable, right? So I have some ideas about content I want to make, because I think it was fun and it worked really well. But if you are into, so what we're going to do on Thursday this week coming up is actually go over to the Varsoon server and play on a real server with real challenge and real combat and all that stuff, because we need to mix it up a little bit. We can't.
We have a group. We may as well use it, right?
Yes.
I mean, as much as the puzzle solving was that was legit, but group puzzle solving. But I think some folks definitely were jonesing for the whole the whole experience to struggle through.
Yes. Not everything can be one-shotted. It's just not that much fun. But so we're going to switch back and forth. We are going to do some more of the narrative style ones. But next Thursday, that's 7:00 Eastern here on the YouTube channel. We stream that live, playing EverQuest 2. So if you're into that, please come check us out. We'd love to have you. Friday, our friend Sparoh is streaming on her YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. We've got a link in the description. She's playing P99. That's the EverQuest emulated server. So always a good time to see that. That's 7 p.m. Eastern. Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, is a surprise stream with our friends Sarah and Essen on their Twitch channel. Also linked in the description. So I don't know what they're streaming. Maybe they don't know, but it's going to be a surprise. It's always going to be a good time. They're hilarious. So you definitely want to check that out. And then Sunday, we are back for another episode of Quests and Coffee, and we're having a great time. And perhaps a little something else on that Quests and Coffee. I'll mention it at the end of the show, but we got a little twist on Quests and Coffee this week. We're playing Celasta Crown of the Magister. If you haven't watched it, you probably enjoy it. We're having a good time. Desrin, you're always there cheering us on and joking around at the corny dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much
rightfully
fun.
So. But it is it's always a good time, and I'm glad to be there.
Yeah, so that's noon Eastern on our YouTube channel right here, live streamed. And that is it for this week's VR News and Notes.
The Pantheon community is full of cool projects, new people, and things that are just worth sharing. What's this over here? Look at that. So let's see what we can find in this week's Community Spotlight. All right, let's do a pretty quick community spotlight here for this episode. First one, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit further, just because I don't think we got to actually highlight this too much. But I wanted to throw back to Sparoh's highlights from the June dev stream, Burning Questions video, where she, collects the big question stuff and, condenses it basically to be a little bit more digestible, which is kind of funny because we're just talking about how VR is going to somewhat redo their format. And and I'm like, wow, Sparoh's kind of got it covered. So no. But it was very, helpful, especially for folks like if you're listening to this and you didn't catch the dev stream, or you're catching up for the last few months or something like that, go check out Sparoh's video linked in the description and the notes down there, because that'll get you caught up really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Go support Sparoh. She's doing a lot of good stuff lately. She's playing Embers with the devs. She's just sure her channel is really on the rise, and she's getting a lot of good feedback. So we want to support Sparoh as much as we can. Yeah, and then the other one. This is kind of random surprise. I mean, we've seen stuff from Tango Talks, off and on over the last several months, I guess. But this one is Enchanter and Charm discussion by Tango Talks, and it's kind of like a stream of thoughts, or I guess it's more like a video essay from Tango on what's, I guess, one of his favorite classes. So there's some reflection on previous other implementations of Enchanter and kind of CC in general. And then kind of looking at Enchanter as it's been shown in Pantheon. And there's a lot of thought into this. It's like I said, it's kind of a video essay, really. And he likes Enchanters, man. I find the best content is when it's done from a place of, speaking about something you're passionate about. Yeah. He's obviously passionate about this. Yeah. About this class, and for a guy with his a very excited sort of big personality, it seems like it's just a fun time. I haven't watched it, but I'm gonna go watch it, and I like his content. So Tango Hotel is a great channel. You should definitely be subscribed to that one too. Yep, and that's actually just gonna be it for this week's, this episode's. I keep doing this every single time. This episode's Community Spotlight.
Climb up so high, mysterious things, perception things, Therek's rainbow. We can go anywhere, group adventuring, explore everything. It's Therek's rainbow. Jen can ride anything. Tales to grow, it's the lore on Therek's rainbow. Therek's rainbow. Therek's Rainbow. Therek's Rainbow.
All right. Well, so I don't have any recorded lore for you this week. I was very, very busy these past couple of weeks with work. I'm actually on holidays as of today, so I had a lot to take care of before I went on holidays. Now, More Than Shadows Part 2, the excellent lore piece from J.N. Gerhardt, was released a week and a half ago now. It is huge.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Right,
about to slip it. It is probably one of the bigger drops we've gotten.
It really is. Now, I've read it, but as I've said before, and you guys know, I like to sink my teeth into stuff. I like to really process before I, start to give deep thoughts on it. And we can do a couple, initial reactions, reflections here, Des. Maybe we can just sort of share how it sort of, how we felt when we first read it, what it kind of stuck out. I'll tell you mine was the understanding more about the Daedrum. It really gives you some good insights into who the Daedrum are, because it's just been hinted at. Are they a dragon cult of like humans or some other race? Or is there something more going on? Clearly, there's something
more going on. That's for sure.
Yes. And there are some world history notes or hints, allusions, perhaps you might say, in the story that I think really, if you know the lore of the game and you've read the canon lore, point to some canonical things that I think really are interesting. I know you picked up on a couple of those, right? Yeah,
and I need to go through it again too. But first of all, the imagery is beautiful.
Stunning,
I would say. But yeah, there's a lot of little things that kind of poke at the overarching drama of Pantheon, and almost more than the other pieces that we've gotten in the last few years. Like, this both feels like a story, like a relatable story, but also with bigger implications. And I'm sure Ben and I needs to go through this, because there is, I just have this sense that there's just so much in there that actually means something, that we just need to tie the, two ends together.
How does it fit into the bigger picture of the world lore? One of the things, and I could be wrong, and this is sort of lore speculation, which is fun, but the celestial boundary is a big part of the world lore, right? Joppa mentioned on the Parting the Veil, when they were talking about Paladin, they went into a huge deep thing about lore of the Paladin, and right? We kind of glossed over that, but Joppa went deep on that. And I think that if you read this lore piece, More Than Shadows Part 2, I think there's some references to it, and I could be wrong. But that's the kind of stuff.
That's the fun part.
I absolutely love. That's the fun part, man.
Could be wrong, could be right.
Into the puzzle of the universe that's what gets me going. So love that stuff. So I didn't want to do a quick rush recording of reading it. I want to actually give this one as much time as it deserves, as I did with the Part 1. So I am going to do a lore recording of it and put the soundtrack and all the ambiance that goes into it in it before, so you guys will have that. We'll see. I don't know when that'll happen, but I'll get to it as soon as we can. So exciting times. And that is the lore you know. All right, Des, that's the end of the show. Let's wrap things up. I want to remind everybody, of course, next episode is Rewind 150. That's July 15th, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, live here on the channel. We're going to be going from the pre-alpha test. And as we said earlier, that actually is only going to be, if you think about it, July 15th, this is episode 148. Well, that's only going to be 149. We have to do something about that, don't we, Des?
I think I've got some ideas.
Yeah. I think maybe you should check out Quests and Coffee on Sunday, July 9th, and all will be revealed.
All will be revealed.
All will be revealed. We'll leave it at that. But that's fun. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. Again, if you are not subscribed here, please do so now. Also, share the podcast on your platform of choice, whether that's Spotify or iTunes or whatever you listen to your podcasts on. We'd really love you to spread it around and get the word out for the show. Thanks so much for hanging out. Desmond, thank you for, again, hanging out with me for another, hour and 15 minutes here today. Talking some Pantheon, as
I'm
always.
baking in my room right now as we speak.
Yeah, everybody should appreciate that it's like 106 degrees in your house.
Yeah.
So,
it's about to be.
Desmond might not live to see episode 150. He might be a shriveled corpse. But we'll see. Anyway, thanks everyone again, and we will see you in 2 weeks for episode 150.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Therek at Pantheon Therek on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers, and thanks for listening.